Hey everyone, this is video number 1 in a two-part tutorial series on pepper spray, also referred to as OC spray in some areas. We're going to do a run-through of a number of questions that are commonly asked when it comes to the purchase and carrying of pepper spray. First, why you might want to consider carrying pepper spray. 2, how pepper spray actually works. 3, we're going to quickly run through some of the legal considerations that you'll want to keep in mind if you plan on purchasing or carrying this stuff. And as part of our second video in the series, we're going to do a live demonstration and run through of a number of safety concerns that you'll want to keep in mind when actually using this stuff. Before I jump into the tutorial, I just want to preface this with a disclaimer. I am not an attorney. None of this should be construed as legal advice. This is based on my review of the statutes in a couple of states regarding the use of pepper spray and carrying pepper spray, as well as the usual obligatory Google research that one does when they look into this sort of thing. Now, all of that aside, let's jump into it. Statistically, 90% of the situations that you're going to end up in are probably not going to require the use of lethal force. What spray is meant to do is to not, take anybody out per se, but it's meant to temporarily debilitate them or incapacitate them so that they are no longer a threat. You contrast that with an alternative option like a gun, and that's really kind of a tool that you use, and there's actually a point of no return when you even pull out one of those items. Again, obvious legal and ethical ramifications that come with that. Just not really the best choice if it's not required. And certainly I'd rather pepper spray someone by accident than the alternative, right? Looking at other options out there, obviously some guys will carry knives, nightsticks, blackjacks. Just keep in mind, a lot of those self-defense items are illegal or banned in many places around the country. And again, I cannot speak to every single state out there. Every state kind of has their own regulations when it comes to those sorts of things. But, generally speaking, if you end up using any of those items and, seriously hurting an attacker, there may be legal consequences, even if it were to be used in self-defense there. So that's the downside of those options. And pepper spray, by contrast, is technically legal across all 50 states. However, as we'll talk about later in this video, there are some restrictions that are made on a state-by-state basis. We'll talk about a couple of those later today. But again, just keep in mind that, pepper spray is probably going to be legal and a better choice, whereas, knives or nightsticks may or may not be in your area. Finally, just a quick note on things like stun guns and tasers. Again, you run into the issue of legality. They're not really permitted in every jurisdiction. And, again, here's one more scenario that you should be aware of with a stun gun or a taser. Those things run on batteries. And you don't want to be in a situation where, you left the thing in your car for a couple of years and suddenly somebody tries to rob you and the stun gun that's been sitting in your glove compartment has been dead on battery, right? That's kind of like a worst case scenario. Now let's move on to how pepper spray works. The active ingredient in pepper spray is capsaicin. Typically, the percentage makeup in pepper sprays meant for human assailants is around 0.18 to 1.33%, with the higher percentage points being preferable. Bear sprays, by contrast, go from anywhere from about 1% to 2%. As a point of reference, this specific unit here, well, both of them, measure around 2 million Scoville heat units, which, relative to a habanero pepper, as an example, is about 6 times hotter. There's a lot of pepper spray brands out on the market. The two brands that have the best reputation based on what I've read seem to be Saber Red and Mace. Why I picked Saber? Seem to have the best overall reviews Every type of self-defense YouTuber out there has recommended these for the most part. Additionally, same brand of pepper spray carried by law enforcement. Includes the NYPD and the LAPD. Mace also seems to make a good one. Just a point of clarification with Mace, they actually have a separate recipe for something that is actually called Mace, and they actually have their own version of pepper spray as well. And just be careful if you were to potentially buy a replacement in the future. Mace, the recipe, is not technically legal in all jurisdictions, and there may be more restrictions associated with it. So keep in mind there's a distinction between pepper spray, mace, and mace, so to speak. What's the difference between these two bottles? Not much. Same exact size, same exact formula, with maybe UV in this one. But the thing to keep in mind, delivery mechanism. So if you look at the top of each of these, this one has what's called a twist top safety mechanism. So looking closely here, that means to actually activate the spray, you have to turn this one all the way to the right and depress it down, and the spray should fire from this end. Good thing about this mechanism, you know exactly which way is forward based on the opposite of whatever this is facing. So lower likelihood of accidentally spraying yourself. Hopefully we all have a little bit of common sense, but people commit accidents when they're stressed out, so just be aware of that. But I'm personally not a big fan of this design here because of how easy it is to actually turn and twist this label. Worst case scenario, you have an accidental discharge in your pocket. Be careful if you do plan on carrying this around in a pocket somewhere. Best case scenario, you'll probably want to clip this to the inside of a purse. You'll notice it has this little clip band here for that. For the guys out there, you could probably clip this to the outside of a pocket or inside of your waistband somewhere. Just be careful. This is less than ideal option in my eyes. The second bottle here has what's called a flip top safety, which is pretty simple. This top here is meant to prevent you from accidentally spraying or discharging the stuff in your pocket. As far as where it's coming out this side, right? To use this, you flip this up, press down on the button, spray comes right out. Pretty simple, foolproof item. Obviously, given the design of this, if you're just kind of feeling for this in your pocket, you may not know which side is up. So, this whole tab there gives you that advantage using this option. But in my opinion, I think this is a better design given the lower likelihood of an accidental discharge. So, flip top mechanism. This one also has a keychain on it. I wouldn't recommend putting this on your car keys, especially if you end up needing this while you're driving, right? But aside from that, those are the major differences between each of these bottles here. Legal in both New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and probably most states. This is probably, if you go by the most strict interpretation of the law, this is probably your only option there. Or you can find another brand that, carries it, hopefully without this little tab mechanism up there. Now that you kind of understand what makes it up, so next thing we'll want to talk about before we move on to the demonstration is the difference between what types of sprays there are actually out there. So there's pepper spray, there's a stream, and there's a gel version, and that has to do with when you press the button, how is it actually getting fired out of these things, right? Spray is probably gonna be not the best option in my opinion, given that it's kind of like a Windex, right? When you press down, it sprays out in like a cone-shaped formation. And the downside of that is because the spray shoots it out in a lot of tiny droplets, there's a little higher risk of a blowback. So that means if there's a lot of wind the day that you end up using this, you do run the greater risk of having that blowback in your face, right? So be careful. The two bottles that we have here use what's called a stream jet type of system. So that means when you fire it fires out in a straight stream, which not only reduces the likelihood of a blowback. Like you're saying, on a given windy day, you're gonna need to have significant gusts to have this really blow back on you. But secondly, it makes it a little easier to aim, especially if you're going for the eyes and the face. This is probably gonna be easier to get on target. There's also pepper gel. Based on what I've read, pepper gel is a little, less liquidish, if that's a word. I'm not a big fan of that, but, obviously gets the job done. Also fires in a straight string, and it's probably, at least advertised, is the lowest likelihood of a blowback. I don't remember why. You guys can look at this yourself, but pepper gels seem to receive some lower ratings online. But take that as you will. These are both pepper streams. They're both called pepper sprays. Don't let that confuse you. But again, based on the labeling, both of these fire in a stream pattern. One, again, making it easier to get on target. Two, reducing the likelihood of that blowing back in your face. So just keep that in mind. If you ever go out there and end up buying replacements for these, you're probably going to want to go with a stream or a gel, just because the sprays do run the risk of blowing back in your face by accident. Let's talk about what the impact of pepper spray is actually going to have if it ends up being used on a person. Based on the label alone, first, you're going to experience extreme irritation to the eyes. That means it's going to be extremely difficult for a person to keep their eyes open after getting sprayed. They're likely going to tear up, and it's going to be very difficult to see. Second, the assailant who gets hit by pepper spray will have difficulty breathing. Now again, this effect is temporary and is not meant to be lethal. Third, you will experience a burning of the face as well as any part of your exposed skin that becomes coated with pepper spray. And finally, this has apparently been proven in labs, but pepper spray can cause psychological side effects such as fear, anxiety, and panic. So now you understand how these things work and what they're made of. Let's talk a little bit about what type of pepper sprays are out there, right? Just so we get some more context. There's a lot of pepper spray brands on the market. If you do a quick Google search, you'll probably get like 10 or 20 different types that just pop up. But the two brands that have some of the best reputations, based on what I've read and what I've seen, are Saber Red and Mace. And again, Mace is also a type of chemical recipe that the Mace brand carries. But Mace specifically is also a brand in itself, and they manufacture their own version of pepper spray. Why I ended up picking the two that you have in front of you are because these are the brands that are most highly recommended across the board. And they are the same brands carried by law enforcement. That includes the NYPD and the LAPD. The other brands can make good pepper sprays as well. Just a heads up, as far as Mace is concerned, just keep in mind that Mace has a separate recipe that may not be pepper spray. They also have their own pepper spray, but Mace, the actual recipe, is not actually legal in certain areas and may be restricted. Pepper spray is the only one that's more widely applicable. So keep those things in mind if you ever were to go out and try to buy replacements for these items. Another brand that I've heard is pretty good is Palm. That's a little more widely advertised. But again, any of those three brands should be pretty useful and have a very good rep behind them. Now, the two pepper spray bottles in front of you both carry the same formula that is created by Saber Red. So again, the bottle on the left, bottle on the right contain the same exact recipe inside them. However, the reason why we purchased separate versions today are due to the legal code across multiple states. Now, I live in Pennsylvania, which has out of the three states we're going to talk about today, we have the most lax regulations when it comes to purchase and carry of pepper spray. In Pennsylvania, generally speaking, there is little to no restriction on the sale, possession, or delivery of pepper spray. Moving a little up the legal ladder is the state of New Jersey. And there's only one main restriction that I noticed based on my read of New Jersey State Code, and that is New Jersey only allows for pepper spray with a max size of 0.75 ounces. So for the state of New Jersey, either of these options in front of you would technically be legal based on my reading of the code. Again, you may want to verify that yourself. New York, unsurprisingly, is going to be the most restrictive when it comes to the carry of pepper spray. They have at least 4 major regulations and objectives that you're going to need to be aware of. First, in the state of New York, if you are to carry pepper spray, it must be pocket-sized. Again, that is defined loosely. I didn't see an exact measurement given in the law, but generally speaking, the 2 in front of you are only 0.75 ounces or less, and they should fall within the definition of pocket-sized. And again, I've seen the one on the left, at least, sold in some online stores that are available in New York. Second, pepper spray in the state of New York can only be purchased in certain areas, and generally those include pharmacies and certain sporting goods stores. When you purchase pepper spray in New York, those are the only areas that are allowed to sell these. And secondly, if they are to sell them to you, you will have to fill out a form that ends up getting submitted to the authorities to record that sale. Third regulation in the state of New York. Pepper spray cannot legally be shipped or delivered by mail. You must purchase it within a designated store that is allowed to sell these things. And obviously a loophole, which I don't see the statutes speak to, is that you can just go across the border into New Jersey, Connecticut, or Pennsylvania, purchase pepper spray there, and bring it back. Again, let your review of the statutes influence your decision on that. But based on the code that I've read, doesn't seem like they speak to whether or not you're actually allowed to buy and bring pepper spray back from other states. The last regulation, and this is a kicker on why we have both of these rather than just one. New York requires that every pepper spray that you carry contain a specific warning logo, and it will have to read the exact text here. Let me try to center it on the camera. The warning logo must say this exactly. Warning: the use of this substance or device for any purpose other than self-defense is a crime under the law. The contents are dangerous. Use with care. Keep out of the reach of children. Not for sale. Were prohibited by law. So, for that reason, you'll notice that even though this also reads Sabre, there's the same exact recipe, this technically cannot be carried in New York under the statutes based on my review of the code. This, no problem. Now, as for the actual legality of all of that and whether or not a cop's going to enforce that kind of statute if you end up using it to defend yourself or defend the life of a loved one is maybe up to debate. But again, if you want to be safe, you're probably going to want to go with this one as far as legality is concerned. So that wraps up phase 1 of our pepper spray tutorial. Tomorrow, I'm going to record the follow-up video where we're going to do a live demonstration of how to use each of these and do a quick run-through of what the most effective way to actually use these are and safety protocols that you'll want to keep in mind. Thank you.